Hi, friends. I thought since my birthday is coming up pretty soon, that it would be a great birthday gift to myself to finally let go of some of this information that I've been holding for the better part of a decade, and that I have alluded to on various posts on various social media platforms, and have written about myself to some extent. I feel the release of that burden will be a huge benefit to finally opening up my expression and explaining a little bit about what's happened over the better part of the past decade. That's the part that I'm going to be concentrating on, because those are the years where it became apparent that I would become a holder of information regarding the actions of spiritual teachers. I also feel it might be a gift for many of my friends here on Facebook in particular, who've also been in many ways supporting these deceptions. Sounds a little tough, but true. What a relief to finally come forth and speak about it. So I'm going to go back a little bit and give a little bit of background, which might explain why it's taken me so long to come forth, because there are multiple issues around why it's taken so long. So way back, not lifetimes, although I believe the spiritual life began way back, multiple lifetimes back. But in this lifetime as a kid, there was an uncanny and out of the blue devotion to the Christ. It wasn't something foisted on me by my parents. Neither was going to church foisted on me by my parents. Indeed, they did the opposite. I did grow up Catholic, and for a time, on my own choosing, I went to church every day, if you can imagine that, before school, until I went to the only Saturday catechism that I ever went to in my life, and then the nun couldn't explain what was going on up there. So I left. But during that time, there would be spontaneous experiences of bliss and spontaneous experiences of a jettisoning of all worry about whatever it was I was about ready to do. And there would be the arising of the natural flow of life. At the time as a kid, that kind of shocked me, but it also didn't shock me. I definitely took note when there was a letting go of worry, because it was so natural and so easy. So that's a little bit of the background, and explains a little bit about some of the drive in this lifetime for a dedication to truth. I wanted to explain a little bit about why I waited so long to come forth, regarding some of the, some would call cryptic answers that I've written on various threads and have posted myself without really coming forth and explaining myself. So it's time. Looking at my notes, I'll say right now that this whole explanation of what happened over the past 10 years is complex. So I'm going to be referring to notes. One of the reasons it's taken me so long has been the devoted heart that I just talked about. And loyal. And so there was a real hesitancy to come forth because of that. There was also a hesitancy to come forth because of the apparent authority of these teachers. And the support of their authority by other spiritual titans, a handful of which indicated to me their support of these teachers. So in many ways, I felt if I came out with information that I'm holding, that I would be somehow affecting the evolution of awakening teachings. That alone would break my heart. And yet, later on, I discovered, in no uncertain terms in my own heart, that unless I came out with what I was holding, it would affect awakening teachings in an even more detrimental manner. It would actually allow deceptions to continue. And once deceptions have begun, there is the necessity to maintain the deception. So having spiritual titans come around and throw their weight behind the teachers was another reason why I waited so long. In fact, I waited several years because of that. Another reason was that there was enormous care by this teacher to take care of someone who had been isolated because of information they were carrying, by sending friends, by sending people to stay with me. I'll go into details about that in the following videos after. That'll come in the weeks to come. Another very large reason for not coming forth until now was that there was a very real internal death threat. I know the source. The source was my teacher. That threat indicated in no uncertain terms that if I let this information out, that my life would be in danger. After I got that message, which sent a shockwave through my entire system, I was, as many of you remember, limited to heart emojis on threads. That was really all I could say. That was all that I could manage to get out. That went on for a couple of years, at least. So that, between the death threat and the spiritual authority that was throwing their support behind this teacher, understandably on many levels, I waited this long to come forth. So in terms of the purpose of the next few videos, I wanted to go into what exactly happened and when it happened, who was involved, because there were various players. I don't believe at this point I'll be naming names, although, as the Dalai Lama says, in cases of abuse, and he was talking primarily in terms of sexual abuse, which this was not, he said, name names. So I had to think about that for a while. Is this something that is necessary? I'll say this much. Without naming names, I know for a fact that so many of you, on Facebook in particular, but other social media platforms which I'm just now beginning to utilize, but so many on Facebook already know this teacher, and they already know the situation. Some of them know the situation in detail. So there really isn't any reason for me in expressing myself around this to get specific as to the names of the actual teachers and those involved. Additionally, I feel that by not naming names, that the potential benefit of talking about what happened and what I'm carrying, and talking about the potential for this happening in other organizations, might be of more benefit to a greater spectrum of people than if I tied it directly to a specific person, persons, or organizations. So, in that sense, I believe I'll keep it going forth in the following videos without naming names, at least for now. There may come a time when that's not the case. But as I mentioned, so many of you already know. So there really isn't any need to express that particular specific information. So thanks for listening. And I'm really glad Leslie's doing this finally. Oh, one of the other things I wanted to mention is that the primary strength, if you will, for opening up in the face of everything that I just mentioned earlier, in the face of other spiritual authority, in the face of a death threat, in the face of other psychic control, were the answers that I received from Spirit. I know this sounds a little woo-woo, but we are spiritual. And it was unequivocally stated what had happened. I won't go into that in this video, but without that support of Spirit and indication as to a breach, a massive breach in two main areas, I would have probably never come forth. But when you get guidance that's specific like that from Spirit itself, that really adds a lot of wind to the message. So thanks for listening, and lots of love, and namaste.